Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Some fascinating rumours emerging today that the situation internally at Red Bull is arguably worse than many of us even thought, with Max Verstappen, Sergio, Perez, even Daniel Ricciardo, certainly Christian Horner and the entire team over there, not happy with something or another. The on-track performances, the off-track situation, as well as apparently all coming to a head now behind the scenes. If this turns out to be true, does it well mean that over the next few rounds it's absolutely critical for Red Bull to start to turn things around on-track and off-track as well, if they want to arrest the absolute collapse of what has been a dynasty in Formula 1 over the last couple of seasons? And what does that of course mean for what Max Verstappen thinks about his future? Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, plenty to discuss on the Franco Colapinto thing. He's going to drive this weekend in Monza. Not the first time that Monza has welcomed a brand new driver for Williams. Just for that race, it happened with Nick De Vries a couple of years ago and he did rather well. To be fair though, that season the Williams had absolutely no downfalls, but it was good in a straight line. This year, the Williams is more competitive on a variety of circuits, but the reality of the way that the points are scored in Formula 1, for at least the bottom teams, it doesn't really reward consistent P11s, P12s, because you get no points anyway. It rewards good one-off weekends. So it's kind of interesting, because a team like Williams, honestly, it's better for their constructors' hopes to have an absolute straight-line rocket ship, so they score some good points on the weekends where there are, big straight-line speed tracks. And on the other weekends are dead last. But this season they have a more consistent car, a better car in many ways, but it's probably not going to be good enough to score that many more points. And will Colapinto score a point any more than Sargent would have done? Not necessarily, of course. The arguments, like we talked about that yesterday in some detail, why they replaced Sargent with Colapinto, whether it's going to be a good or a bad move. This is an interesting rumour, though, that Colapinto has some sponsors coming in that are going to pay a certain amount of money, maybe 500k a race, 4.5–5 million over the course from now to the end of the season. So, maybe there are some reasons why James Vowles has taken this decision. Now, this guy's solo report, we'll come back to him in a few minutes because he is the one talking about this big Red Bull behind the scenes stuff. Another bit of gossip on this as well is that Doralton Capital, American owners of Williams now, are apparently not so happy with this decision from James Vowles to replace Logan Sargent. Now, I'm not necessarily sure this is going to go anywhere. Are they really going to tell Vowles that he's fired over getting rid of Logan Sargent, who obviously was massively underperforming? I'm not so sure, but there is an argument that there were many more activations and things in the pipeline with Logan Sargent as an American driver, with, the Austin Grand Prix coming up soon, the Vegas Grand Prix coming up towards the end of the year, that may have hurt things to some extent, but it's not like Logan was a massive commercial entity in America. Obviously a popular driver on some level, but, maybe not what you might have expected him to be in that region. So I'm not really sure why Dalton would be so annoyed, but if they are, that's pretty interesting. Domenicali, or Domenicali as we like to call him here on the channel sometimes, with a couple of other interesting ideas. So, Abu Dhabi test that happens after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix is over. They usually do some testing. Apparently, they are considering some sort of sprint race for rookies and young drivers, maybe in Formula 1 cars, after Abu Dhabi. So this would be a very interesting idea. To be honest, I wouldn't be opposed. I mean, more Formula 1 action, an extra Grand Prix type thing, a sprint race, I don't know. I guess it's not a terrible idea because all the cars are there, all the Formula 2 drivers are there because they finished their season in Abu Dhabi as well. So maybe there's something in that. Bit gimmicky, I guess, but at least it's not disrupting the normal F1 weekend. So I guess I'm not going to complain about some extra action to see how the rookies are going to get on going into the upcoming season. What I will complain about though is this. Now, it wasn't that long ago, I swear I remember the comment from Domenicali where he said, more than 6 sprint races, it's never going to happen. We're committed to keeping it as it is. We're not too many sprint races and ensuring that the standard procedure of Formula 1 weekend is maintained on the vast majority of occasions. But I told you guys at the time, and I'll tell you again now, that was only a matter of time until Domenicali says the following: from next year, there will be room to increase sprint races, and we are discussing whether it will be possible to do like a MotoGP in the future, with every race having a sprint race. And this should be no surprise. Liberty Media are buying MotoGP. They are thinking, well, having a sprint race on every Saturday, it does tend to increase the viewership, and I'm not a big fan of it. You guys know that. I think this year's format is maybe marginally better. They've made some progress, but I don't want to sprint every weekend. I don't think many fans want to sprint every weekend. But stay tuned, because in the next couple of years, that may be, unfortunately, exactly what we have. Ferrari are at Monza this weekend, going to their home Grand Prix, and with a massive upgrade as well. They've also upgraded or downgraded, depending on your perspective, their livery livery. Their numbers on the car are now black and a bit of black on the front wing, so great stuff. I mean, what I care about is the car fast, and this weekend they have major upgrades in the works. Very interesting to hear actually in this article at Formula Uno from Giuliano De Chessa, leave a link down below. As always in these type of videos, they talk about how Ferrari's technical structure was not so happy with the way that Enrico Cardile, who's leaving for Aston Martin, was managing things. Fred Vasseur has, for the interim, until I think an announcement maybe this weekend, is taking charge of the technical development, and the team over there has decided that what they're going to do from now on, instead of bringing marginal upgrades, one piece here, one piece there, is to bring substantial packages all at once. This is McLaren style, what they did this past weekend in the Netherlands, what they did back in Miami as well. When they bring an upgrade, they bring an upgrade, and they bring multiple parts all at once. That's what Ferrari have done. They've prepared it for Monza, and they will have various other pieces from now to the end of the season, but the big package is arriving this weekend. It includes lots of things. New rear wing, new beam wing, new floor is a big one as well. Of course, they're going to have a nice low downforce spec for this weekend's Grand Prix, but this is the big package. This is, the one that needs to work, because yes, Ferrari were better in Zandvoort than they thought they would be, certainly than I thought they would be, and they ended up not far. I mean, Charles Leclerc was a couple of seconds off Max at the end of the race. Now, they could match Max, sure. Could they match Lando? No, he was way up the road. Even on a track they did okay at, Leclerc's now scored back-to-back podiums, but they're still not Ferrari where they want to be. So this weekend is meant to be a big one. To be fair, Fernando Alonso did make that comment on Ferrari being the team to beat. Whether you read that as being the team to beat for Aston or the team to beat overall, that's a question. But, Ferrari, it's pretty interesting for them. The rumour has it, or at least there's talk from MUS today, that Barcelona, Silverstone, Budapest and Zandvoort are tracks that the Ferrari doesn't really like. Tracks with these kind of long, medium speed corners like you see in that middle sector in Zandvoort. To be fair, maybe not that dissimilar to the Parabolica at Monza, right? The final corner is a long, kind of medium speed right-hander that is definitely not flat out. Of course, after you come through the first chicane at Monza, that upcoming corner isn't really a corner, it's just flat out for modern Formula 1 cars, but it's not like every single piece of Monza is going to suit this Ferrari well, but apparently most cars struggle with those long, medium speed corners just because of the way that ground effect tends to work, the way that the car rolls on the longitudinal axis and the front wheels are turned accordingly. Apparently only McLaren have really mastered this, at least of the cars that are on track at the moment here in 2024. So there's some discussion on that. Ferrari are bringing an upgrade to try and address it, and whether it works is absolutely critical, to be honest, for whether we are going to be able to see Ferrari contend from now to the end of the year, but also even next season. If this development doesn't work, it raises serious questions on their trajectory for 2025. If it does, then, I'm sure Hamilton will be kind of happy, even if he's got a race against these new upgraded Ferraris. Hamilton won the Italian Grand Prix in 2018, but since then it was Leclerc, Gasly, Ricciardo. Ricciardo was still wild. I mean, to be fair, 2020 and 2021 were both crazy races, but 2022, that was Max Verstappen when he obviously took over and has won there over the last couple of years. Will that be the case this year? He is not going in as the favourite. He has failed to win now in the last 5 rounds. Still scored loads of points. I believe the driver that scored the most though in the last 5 rounds is actually now Oscar Piastri, which I'm sure will make Lando Norris kind of frustrated because it could have been him, right? And it could have been a much closer championship fight. But 1 DNF for Max, that gap is now, very different story, right? And the feeling is, as Christian Horner says, McLaren is the benchmarks. If they keep this pace, it will be tight in both championships. Horner also says that he believes the front wing is the place to look. Now, the front wing is arguably the most important part of the car aerodynamically because it determines how the airflow works over the entire rest of the chassis and all the aerodynamic elements. Horner says, front wing, that's the place that we need to improve. I'm not sure he's necessarily saying, oh, they're doing something illegal, but I think the Red Bull might be asking for clarification on a couple of things because there has been a question as to how McLaren have been able to gain so much ground. I mean, if you consider the Miami package plus this package in Zandvoort, you can argue they've gained, 8, 9 tenths, even maybe a second a lap on their performance at the start of the season. Red Bull have also absolutely regressed, and for various reasons, but McLaren have made more progress than you might expect, and therefore, some teams, maybe Red Bull, will be raising questions of whether that's actually legitimate or not. Red Bull themselves, they are reasonably positive after the Dutch Grand Prix that they've discovered something, like they've realised something about their car, given that they split the specifications, of course, between their drivers and, have obtained as a result valuable information on the RB20. And as Max says, yeah, disappointed in the result, always want to win in front of the home crowd, but there's lots of work to do on the setup, on the balance of the car to get it right. And even Max is saying that something's gone wrong with the development, and then goes on to say that it's very hard to pinpoint where the car has become harder to drive. I mean, cough, cough, asymmetric braking, cough, cough, but, I don't know if that's true or not. We've discussed that over the last couple of weeks, but there are signs, is all I'll say. However, let's dive into some of the rumours about what's happening at Red Bull, because clearly, from February, really, until now, things have been somewhat dramatic behind the scenes, and sometimes what you'll find is, in sports and various things, winning cures many problems, and while they are winning, even if there are things underlying the surface behind the scenes that aren't so good, that's fine. When you're no longer winning, all of a sudden, things start to boil to the surface. So let's get back to this guy's solo report. And it's not like this guy is an incredibly credible journalist or anything like that by any means. He also made this tweet back at the end of July, where he said that Ricciardo to Red Bull was basically locked in. Now, to be fair, there is a lot of reason to believe that this basically was nearly a done deal. Like, there have been rumours to this effect that Ricciardo to replace Perez was effectively done and decided, until then Carlos Slim and the Mexican sponsors potentially spoke to Red Bull and or Liberty Media or basically Horner or someone to keep Perez in the seat. So, I want to take this with a bit of a grain of salt from both angles, but let's just listen to it and see what you think about it in the comments section below. My sources within Red Bull and VCarb have described the vibes, it's pretty funny, within RBR as rancid. Drivers are mad, mechanics are mad, the hierarchy is stressed out. This is what apparently is going on. So Max Verstappen has been demanding change apparently since the British Grand Prix, which does make a fair bit of sense actually if you look at the timeline of the season. Of course, Hungary was not a good weekend either following that, and he was absolutely Mad Max on the radio that weekend. Marco apparently tried to calm him down and say, okay, don't worry, we're going to get rid of Perez, Ricciardo's coming in instead, but Horner then said no, because of, well, potentially those rumours on the money and stuff like that. Verstappen wants Perez to act as a rear gunner, but his performance this year has been a strain on the relationship. Checo retains the seat, but of course Perez is therefore not happy as well. And to be fair, whatever you think about whether what he's saying is true and whether sources are saying the right or wrong things, a lot of this actually, when you listen to it, does make a lot of sense in terms of what we've seen publicly and what you could imagine would be happening privately as well. Because would Perez be happy that he's signed this 2-year deal? Feels like on some level he was coerced into signing it with many release clauses and betrayed by the fact that he was kept in the dark as to whether he was losing his seat or not mid-season, and also the idea that he signed this 2-year deal, but yet they were going to get rid of him 10 races later. So, and I can't imagine that Perez feels particularly happy with Horner about that, and apparently that relationship has now become strained. And potentially Ricciardo is also frustrated by this. Maybe he thought he was getting the seat. He felt like there wasn't great communication either way, and apparently, which would be surprising to me, but supposedly he's cut communication off with Christian Horner, who, of course, close friend, confidant in many ways, something that has made the team principal very upset because, close friend, whatever you want to say. Both Horner and Marco agree Ricciardo needs to be retained by Red Bull, something made slightly complicated by the fact that he's being offered a multi-year deal by Audi, which is very interesting because Audi need a driver alongside Hülkenberg, and to be fair, would Ricciardo make a fair bit of sense? Sure. So that's an interesting tidbit if that's true, that with Audi looking for another driver, the Audi deal might be on the table for them. Of course, they wanted Sainz, couldn't get Sainz. Ricciardo's now getting approached by Audi, and if Red Bull can't offer Ricciardo a promotion to Red Bull Racing, then maybe he goes for that. Then there's some talk about Liam Lawson, because again, and many of you guys made this comment on yesterday's video, that the way that Red Bull are handling the Lawson situation is actually quite frustrating for both parties. They didn't let Lawson go to Williams because they wanted the right to keep him just in case they want to make a mid-season change from now to the end of the year. So, Paul Lawson is just really struggling to find a drive anywhere. His contract is due to run out potentially soon. There's a loan deal to Audi, which is on the table as well. But of course, also, Ricciardo potentially involved in that conversation in addition. And the other piece is that the Constructors Championship, while it's not that important to fans, it's actually very important to the teams and the staff on those teams, because apparently the bonuses for some of the mechanics and engineers at Red Bull is based on the Constructors Championship result. Maybe the drivers as well, but the constructors at least in part. So, there is potentially a feeling that off track and on track as well, the decisions that have been made, the progress on the car, which hasn't really existed, in addition to the decision to keep Perez, means that lots of people are going to potentially lose a lot of money as a result of this. There's also some drama potentially on Hugh Bird, whose paternity leave was planned for after Monza. So Perez has got a new race engineer last weekend in, is it Richard Wood? Well, actually literally says right here, I was just thinking Woody in my head, but yeah, Richard Wood. And there's a rumour that Hugh Bird might not actually come back and just had enough with this. He wants out of there because he took the paternity leave earlier than expected. So, very interesting. We know that Jos Verstappen is a happy man. I mean, he barely ever is. But he wants changes as well. And apparently Max Verstappen wants changes as well. So, very interesting developments here. I mean, interesting kind of reply as well. Will there be a driver change? Possibly not to the end of the season. Is Ricciardo going to stay at RB to try and get the Red Bull seat even later? Probably yes, because it's not like Audi are very good right now either. So, interesting to your thoughts in the comments. This guy Daz, who is definitely talking as if he either works for or knows people that do work in Red Bull, and basically says this is fantasy. The vibe hasn't really changed in all the years that I've worked there, winning or losing. Says it's BS. But maybe that's true. But also that's one guy's perspective. Who knows what the rest of the factory really feels like? You can definitely see the reasons why people would be frustrated with the state of internal affairs at Red Bull. Obviously, the Horner allegations and scandal and drama and controversy didn't even touch on that. And the Newey departure, the Jonathan Wheatley departure, there's really no doubt that things internally at Red Bull are not as good as they were. Whether that defines as rancid, I don't know. But there are clearly lots of complicated factors here at play that are going to make things ever more challenging for them to succeed on and off the track as well. And as we talked about right at the start of the video, if Red Bull's on-track performances don't turn around quickly because, the developers, the engineers, or whatever, they cannot develop in the way that they want to fix the problems that they currently have, and maybe, the vibes, or shall we say the morale, the motivation internally at Red Bull isn't what it maybe once was due to various problems, that is going to affect things everywhere, and Max isn't going to be happy about that, and he's probably not happy as it stands, although he's probably going to hold on to win this year's championship. Just one final thing to mention for you guys. The Monza Grand Prix is coming up this weekend. These are what the curbs used to look like at Monza. This is what they look like now. They've made substantial changes to the design of the track. Well, the track is the same, but the first corner and also this Ascari chicane, the curbs are now different. They're increasing the amount of room that the drivers have to play with because, well, you could not drive over these curbs. This is Hamilton's fastest ever lap. It's the fastest lap in F1 history, actually, in terms of average overall speed. His pole lap for the Monza Grand Prix back in 2020 in the W11. And this is the amount of curb that he could take because you can't run really over the curb and you can't run over the sausage curbs either. That's the curb that he could take, of course, back then on these curbs. Now you can take, I'm sure, way more curb than that. So it's going to make Ascari absolutely rapid, I think, this year. And I do wonder whether the track record could be in threat. I don't think it will be, but in 2018, the pole time was a 119.2. In 2019, I think it was a 119.3 or 4, but obviously 2019, I don't want to talk again about the end of that qualifying session. This was 2020 where Hamilton did a 118.8. I think it was just under a 118.9. That is currently the lap record at Monza. I think in 2021, they did about a 119 mid again, something like that. So, will the changes to the track make the track a few tenths faster? Possibly. And if they do, then just watch out for some of the lap times that the guys are coming up with this weekend. But very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.